Hey everybody, we're back again. It's episode 11 of the CMY show, CMY Cast. I'm here with Christian and Yanil. I am Mark. Today we have a couple topics we want to touch on. First of all, an update from last episode. If you remember, Yanil was selling all his stuff to try to fund a new camera. And so I want to let him, tell us if he was successful in those sales and, what he ended up getting.
So yeah, sales were super successful. Pretty much within a couple of days, I got rid of everything, and I picked up this guy. It's a Q2, not a Q1. Take my word for it. You can actually tell by looking at them. Actually, you can. It has less buttons for more money.
That's Leica.
Yeah, but yeah, I actually sold the Q1 within I think a day of posting it up. For I think $30 less than what I paid for it 7 months ago. It turned into a little bit of a headache when the buyer became kind of a nightmare, and the guy, he's like, the camera rattles. Like,
oh yeah, we should actually. I'm gonna jump in and say this is a norm. So for anybody who's never used a Leica Q before, the camera has in-body image stabilization. So when the camera's off, and even sometimes when it's on, there's, part of, the lens elements that move around. And if you shake it, you will hear it. I had a Q for a bit, as we discussed a couple of times, and I heard it too. I kind of assumed that's what it was from. And because the camera had, no problem taking pictures properly. I actually had the same, when I ended up selling it, had the same concern from the buyer. He ended up being okay with it. I ended up just saying, look, if I'll give you back an extra $100 to make you at ease about it. It wasn't that much. So, but keep that in mind. If you're ever looking to buy a Q, new or used, they will have a slight rattle to it. So don't
just like the SL2 or probably any camera with IBIS.
Correct. Yeah. I'm pretty sure. I mean, it's been a while now, but I'm pretty sure my A7 II had that as well. There was, minimal amount of shaking in there, but, you will hear
right,
that.
Because Sony's had IBIS since 1987.
Yeah, right. So anyway, rant over. I just wanted to chime in there because that's just an annoyance that I came across
for sure.
Well too,
that guy, that's ridiculous. That guy should have known what he was talking about or done some research, 5 seconds of research.
So the guy had a Q before, 3 weeks ago, and he sold it and he wanted another one, so he bought mine. And I think at some point, what really happened was that he got buyer's remorse and then wanted to send it back. And I really didn't want to deal with it. I offered him $200 for it too, like Mark did. I'm like, I'll give you $200 back. Just keep the damn camera. I don't want this thing back. It cost me $60 to ship it to you. Just keep the freaking camera. He's like, no, there might be a problem down the line, blah, blah, blah. I'm like, whatever, man. Just ship it back then. But we need to figure out something because I'm not going to give you back your money unless I get the camera back because I have no protection. So I tell him, start a claim through PayPal. Maybe that'll offer me some protection. I have no idea. I don't really sell a lot of things. So he does that. He makes a claim at 10 p.m. the next day. I see it. I'm like, whatever. I'll deal with this thing in the morning. I get to the office in the morning and I have a message from him. I made the claim, but disregard it. I sold the camera. And I realized the sound is normal. I'm like, of course the sound is normal. He sent me a video of the sound, which is the sound we all know and love. And I'm like, but is the camera on? He's like, yeah, the camera's on. The camera wasn't on. Everything was off in the camera. The screen was off. You could tell the camera was off and I was making the sound. I'm like, I don't really care. But then he ended up selling it because he wanted to get an M240 again because apparently he had one of those before too. So I'm pretty sure the guy just had buyer's remorse and was being an asshole.
This guy sounds like Mark, man.
Hey,
minus the rattle situation. Just kind of buying and selling cameras.
Hey, I just explore. I explore.
Nothing wrong with some exploration, bro.
So I found his the Leica classifieds on Facebook. I found all his posts on there. He had a Q last year. He sold the Q. He bought it again in January. Sold it in July. Bought mine in August. Sold mine in August. Guys, he went through 3 Qs in 6 months.
Yeah, that's crazy.
We're pretty far into the year, so 12 months.
Yeah, that's pretty crazy.
And now Mark wants to buy a Q again.
No.
Yeah, he does.
I don't.
Yes, he does. So he does.
I will speak to that. I really think the Q is a great camera. It has, and I don't want to call it a flaw, but it just doesn't fit what I'm looking for a camera for that purpose. One thing, and is really just the size, nothing else. Well, and the price as well, because I mean, it's a lot to put into a camera. So, it kind of have to be quote unquote perfect. Meet all the requirements, and it's really just size. That's really it, right? I want something that's smaller, that if I'm traveling or out and I want to have a camera to worry about, like I said, that is what I'll use. The interesting part that I realized though is the size thing. Like I've been using the M10 a lot, obviously, and the size thing, I feel pretty comfortable taking it out, and using it and carrying it around and so on. So I don't know if it'd be that big of a deal, but at the same time, it's like, well, if I'm going to buy a camera or carry a camera that's that size or build, whatever, I might as well just take the M10, just use that, so that's my thought on it. Why? Yeah, but I don't necessarily need autofocus in some of those scenarios. And if that's the case, then I'll just take the smaller camera.
Well, I mean, if you get the Q2, you get more resolution too.
Yeah, I'm okay.
And you have two focal lengths, and you have two focal lengths instead of.
Yep.
I mean,
35 all the things.
Extra lenses.
I do the 75 all day on this thing.
Really?
Yeah, dude. Yeah. I mean, legit, it looks pretty ridiculous.
It's still like 8 megapixels, which is my X100 cropped a little bit.
Yeah, right. It's enough
totally fine.
It's 8 megapixels. Instagram. Is that what you said?
Yeah, 75 millimeter gets you to 8 megapixel.
Just still enough for a print. I mean, shit. You can do probably an 8x10 with that.
On Instagram is fine.
Yeah. So.
But speaking on to size, I got this little Match Technical lens cap for it. It's like a rubber ugly lens cap, but it seriously makes the camera so much more convenient. I keep it on a strap all day. It could bounce into things, hit things, and nothing happens. It's not like a metal lens cap that's trying to get dinged up. It could swing down, hit Ronan in the face, and he'll be okay because it's rubber.
I have a rubber. It's not the Match Technical one, but I think I got it on Amazon or something.
It's the neoprene
rubber lens cover. And so I have one on both my Q2 and my QP.
Yeah, that thing was a game changer for this camera, especially because the actual Q lens caps suck. Anybody that's used one know it falls off every time you take it out of the bag. It's big. Keep it in your pocket. I'm like, that thing was a game changer. But as for the actual camera, it pretty much resolved every issue I had with the Q, which was weather sealing. And did we discuss the ISO settings? About how it doesn't drop below 1/15th of 1/60th of a second or something.
I think we talked about it last time. Yeah, I think we mentioned it briefly with the astrophotography thing.
Yeah, in case we didn't.
That's right.
The way the Q1 works, you set the auto ISO to, let's say, max out at 6400. The minimum shutter speed you want it to do is 1/15th because it has IBIS, so you could go pretty low on it. But for some reason, the camera will not go below 1/60th until you get to the maximum ISO you selected, which will be 6400, I guess. So we'll get to 6400, and once it goes to 1/60th and 6400, it can't go and it maxes out there. Then it'll go down to 1/15th, which is
instead of going, which is it should be backwards,
right? So the Q2 resolved that issue. Like if you set it to 1/15th, it'll stay at 100 ISO at 1/15th until it can't. Then it'll go to 200 or 160.
Yeah. Dude, IBIS is legit. It has saved my butt so many times. Actually, I shot a wedding last week, a small wedding, and the girl was like, "Oh, can you take a picture of my dress?" Because it's kind of like an informal wedding, if you will. It's kind of just like a dinner party. And she takes me to her, her master bedroom where her dress is, and it's like almost pitch black in there. And I was like, "Cool, man." I had my SL2 and my Q2.
Brace yourself.
And I just put it down to 1/20th or 1/25th and shot it like that. And it was perfectly sharp. Yep. Literally tack sharp, dude. And I don't think I went over 3200 ISO.
Yeah. That's one of the things that always shocks me on the camera. I'll be outside at night, walking the dog. Oh, let me take a picture of something. How am I at 160 ISO? Because you go down to 1/8 and it also has a 1.7 aperture. So
yeah.
The camera sees in the dark.
Yeah, it really does. It's pretty crazy. It's really good. It's really nice, man. And the glass is so good. It's so sharp. Get that Fuji out of here.
Did you 3D print that thing?
Yes, I did. I said it. Look at it. It's a 3D printed. It's a PLA block. Speaking of 3D printing,
wait, what?
Segue. I don't know if we mentioned this a couple episodes ago, and I don't know what's going on with my camera. It keeps like trying to not focus on me. The 35 millimeter Voigtlander Ultron, which is this guy here, this lens, comes with a little focus knob. And I think I'd mentioned that I was working on 3D printing one for it. So I actually did get that done. So I don't know if you'll be able to see it here. Let's do the whole thing. Let's see, does that work? No, it doesn't work. There you go.
If you had a Q, it would macro focus, just to throw that in there.
So this is a 3D printed focus tab, and it has a recessed screw hole, so you can actually screw it into the actual barrel of the lens. Doesn't interfere with the internal parts of the lens. Thanks to Yanni for helping me figure out what the screw length and thread is.
Do you have that written down somewhere?
Yeah. I bought a bunch of screws on Amazon for it. So
I'm using M2x3.
Yeah. I have to double check which one this is here, but what I intend to do is
mass produce that, dude. So many people have Voigtlanders.
Yeah. You can buy stick-on. Man, this autofocus is like distracting. You can buy stick-on lens tabs and so on like that, but again, they're stick-on and they can come loose. And I actually did some quick research before I ended up deciding to make this, and that's what a lot of people are saying. Like, hey, yeah, it comes loose. You kind of have to, readjust it and so on. So yeah, this works well. It doesn't move around. It feels really natural. It feels like using any of the other Voigtlander lenses I have that have a focus tab. So yeah, I'm probably gonna be mass producing these, put them up for sale. I haven't figured out what I'm going to charge from them yet, but simple fix to an otherwise really nice lens as an alternative to like an actual Summicron, from a price and performance perspective. So yeah, 3D printing. So that's 3D printed. This is not. Sorry, Yanni.
I asked him if he could 3D print me a Leica S3. Couldn't do it.
No, I have a very
3D printing fail.
Small 3D printer.
You only 3D prints foodies.
Yeah, and that camera is ginormous.
So, just shooting back to this Q thing. The low, not really negatives, but the Q always amazed me. Like when I would zoom into things and everything, it looked great. And a lot of times on this one, like I zoom in and it's not wowing me the same way. And I think it's just because it has so many more pixels that you could see any little camera shake or slightly missed focus or anything like that. Overall, it still is wowing me, but I just don't love the images as much as a Q1. I'm sure that'll change eventually, though.
That's an interesting
revelation. I mean, I know what you're saying, and I can agree with you on that. I remember Leica Store Miami lent me QP to go to New York with, and I took it to New York. When I saw the images out, I mean, I literally came back and the same day went to Leica Store Miami. I was like, here's your QP back, now sell me one. And I can see what you're saying about the Q2, but I don't know, man. It's such a I feel like at that point it's almost pixel peeping.
It can also be that I look at the Q like, oh, you're like 4 years old already. You're a haggard little sensor. You've been around the block. So I accept your faults and I think you still look great. Meanwhile, the Q2, I'm like, you're the brand new 47 megapixel GOAT. Like, you better be perfect. And I zoom in, I'm like, that eyelash does not look perfectly sharp right now. How much money did I pay for this thing? Crap.
I think the JPEGs are nicer in the Q2 though. Like on the high contrast black and white.
Yeah, because the Q2 has film simulations, stealing that from Fuji, I guess. Mm-hmm. So it has like black and white high contrast or black and white normal, natural, vivid, and standard. When before it just had color and monochrome.
Right. Yeah, man. I just love that camera so much. So talking about Qs as well, on the wedding tip from my end, I have a second photographer that works for us, and he shoots all my weddings with me. So the last wedding we did, at the reception, I had told him beforehand, I was like, oh, next wedding, remind me, and I have a QP for you to use during the reception, so that, because that's what I use during the reception. So that's basically like, so the, you know, the photos look more cohesive. I give it to him, put a flash on it. I just like quickly, like literally 5 seconds, run through like, this is your ISO, blah, 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 blah. Here you go. Should be good to go. Dude, he comes back like an hour later. He's like, this thing is amazing. I need to buy one of these things. So good. It's so fast. I don't even sometimes know that I took the picture because it's so fast. He was like thrilled about it, dude. He loved it. I actually haven't even seen those images yet. I should take a look at them. I love that. But I'm excited because I'm excited to see how that's going to look in comparison to like my images, and I'm sure that it will look more cohesive.
Apparently, like the autofocus is contrast detect only, which to camera snobs is like, oh, that will never autofocus fast. But this thing is super quick and never misses focus.
It really doesn't. It actually, it's better than the SL2. The autofocus is better than the SL2, which kind of bothers me, considering that the SL2 is a few $1,000s more than the Q2.
It's probably the fastest focusing camera.
$1,000 more than the Q2, but
no lens on that for that price.
Yeah, exactly, with no lens. So I don't know, man. It really is a wonderful little piece of machinery. I absolutely love mine. I use it almost every day on my shoots, and I've kind of adapted a new style of photography because of it, because of its mobility. Like I put it on my rock and roll strap, which is like nice and long and like elasticy. And what I do is like, I just kind of like hold it out like this in front of me. And I have like the strap like pulling on my neck. So that's almost like stabilized in a way. Mm-hmm. And then I'll chase around little kids, like while I'm doing kids shoots, and I'll chase them around and like shoot, like, I'll be like, oh, why don't you like run after me? You know, like, and I'll run backwards while they're running at me. And I'll just like, I don't even have to look, almost like, as long as I have like the lens kind of like centered to them, and I'll like get in nice and close and move back a little bit and just kind of like shoot it like I'm shooting a movie, you know, like I'm doing cinematography instead of photography. And in the image, I love the images, and I'll like flip it to like portrait instead of landscape, and like you could just do so much with it. And I love those images, and they always come out awesome. And I love shooting. Funny, because you mentioned about it not like hitting tack sharp focus. I'll shoot at like 1/160th, excuse me, 1/160th. So, or like 1/125th. So I do have a little bit of like that motion blur and stuff. And like, it's super fun, man. It looks awesome too. And I've had a great reaction from my clients about it.
I'm not gonna lie, I love the thing. Like every time I look at this camera, I'm like, I look at the pictures, and I'm just amazed. The fall off on the bokeh and everything on the.
It's amazing. It really is an amazing camera.
I love 28mm, but most 28mm aren't that fast, so they just it's like a documentary image. Like, this is the entire scene, and this is what everything looks like. To be able to shoot 28mm on a full frame out f1.7, it's a whole new element, and it's cool because you have like your subject, which is usually my like 1.5 tall son, in this huge background, but he's in focus and everything else is blurry, and it's like one step away from medium format, to be honest. Yeah, that's what it feels like. And it makes everything look not magical. What's the word I'm looking for? Like dreamy. Yeah, pretty much. Like, it looks like you're like in a dream. Like, it's this little kid in focus and everything else blurry. Like, this is awesome. Yeah. I use the 35mm frame lines, which is great. And if you're not familiar with the camera, so you have the option of shooting in 28, and then if you hit a little, like the little, what would be for back button focus, I have it programmed so that when I hit that, it gives me 35mm frame lines. That's full 28mm. 35. There you go. 35, 50 and 75. Obviously,
show me 35 you're losing. Again. That's 35. Okay, so
Yeah,
I'm
that's
getting
35.
I just
And
shoot
I
35.
actually shoot it more with the 35 millimeter frame lines, and you're still getting like a 30 something megapixel file,
Yeah,
right?
still 30
35 or
megapixels.
36 something.
I think it's 30 or 32, something like that on 35 millimeter.
Yeah,
which is
and
more
then,
than what the Q was.
I mean, and if you're
28.
shooting RAW, which I always shoot RAW, it keeps the full file. But when you put into Lightroom, it only shows you like immediately, like you don't have to recrop it. It already crops to 35. So it's as if you're shooting a 35 millimeter Leica Summilux with IBIS. You know what I mean? Like it's just, that's why I'm so in love with it. It kind of, I feel like it blows everything out of the water.
Plus, what you just said about being a Summilux. Like, if you look up the price of a 28 millimeter Summilux,
or a 35,
how much?
Or I'm saying, or a 35.
Yeah, they're like $4,000 or
Summilux.
$5,000 lenses.
Yeah,
a brand new Q2, which this is not, a brand new one costs $5,000. It's pretty much the price of the lens, except you're also getting a 42 megapixel or 47 megapixel body attached to it with autofocus.
And let's not forget the manual focus, right? The switch where it's an actual manual focus lens, not focused by wire, which
it's still an electronic focus, but it's one like a linear focus.
Like,
so you have,
so it's like
I
honestly
could not tell it was electronic. When I used it, I was like, okay, cool. You know, this is great.
The only way it's dampened. Like you could tell, like there's something holding it back, which the regular Leica lens doesn't. But
I've never used the manual focus on the Q. It just, I don't know. It doesn't feel like the M10 at all to me. I know that some people love doing it. I probably would use it maybe in macro mode, which it does really well too. And I've used the macro mode at weddings for small things like details like wedding rings or invitations or flowers or things like that. Like I'll get in really, really, really close, put it into 35 millimeter and shoot it like as a macro. And it looks so beautiful, man. It's so good.
I use it not through the viewfinder, but I use it for zone focus. Like right there at f11, at these settings, I have everything between infinity and like 4 feet in focus, which is everything I'm shooting a little Havana. I could just point the camera anywhere and everybody's in focus.
Right.
And that's how I use the manual focus. And
yeah, I guess you could do that. Whoa.
And like
guys.
Like different cameras could do it. Like the Fuji has a focus scale, but you have no idea by looking down at the camera what it's at, or if it moved, or if you nudged it, or anything like that. This is like
you can't quickly feel where, you know, for instance, like, you know, 6 o'clock position, you know, that's probably like 1.2 meters or something like that. And if you go to a different position, you won't know that on like the Fujis and other cameras that don't have an actual, you know, focus tab or, you know, an actual scale on it, right? It's just perpetually spins, if you will.
Right. Like this is, if you put it into manual mode, it's like shooting a manual focus only lens. It has that sort of feel to it, which is unique to this camera, basically.
I should try it more. I mean, like, I think at weddings, it's just so much easier for me to like focus and recompose, you know, than like manually focus to get exactly what I want in focus.
Like if you're shooting an outdoor wedding and you want everything in focus, like at f11, you could do it and you don't even have to focus. You could just go around snapping at everybody and everything will be in focus.
Yeah, that's true.
But if you
I mean, stylistically, I would never do that, but you're right. You could do that.
Like that's why you'd never use it. If you're like a documentary style wedding photographer, it will be perfect for you.
Yeah, I mean, I do consider myself to be like reportage. I don't shoot wide open, and I know a lot of wedding photographers that like every lens they have, they shoot it wide open no matter what.
I feel judged right now. Okay. This thing lives at a 1.7.
Yeah, I mean, I don't blame you, dude. Like it looks insanely beautiful at 1.7, but when you're working with kids and like it's not, you know what I mean? I have to give it some leeway. So
yeah, I'm actually just looking at Lightroom and seeing like the pictures I shot with the Q1. Like, yeah, of all the, you know, I forgot how many pictures I shot. I was like, I think it's 50 pictures I still have, and like 32 of them were wide open. So
yeah, so, at 1.7, it really is beautiful. And like you mentioned too, the fall off is stunning, dude. It's so pretty. I don't know. I wish that the price point wasn't at, like what it was, even though I think it's worth every penny and I would pay it 10 times over. But I think that it would be more accessible and a lot more people would be open to having one if it wasn't $5,000. You know what I mean? $5,000 can get you like a full Canon kit.
All right. So I'm usually the guy on this show saying who owns a bunch of Leicas, but also thinks that they are stupidly overpriced. I think the Q and the Q2 are the only Leicas that are actually worth their price. Nowhere else are you going to get a nearly 50 megapixel, 28 millimeter f1.7, fast autofocus, good manual focus, all the features that this has, like weather sealed, like it doesn't exist. This is the only place you're going to get that. And it's not because it's some like sublime feeling like, oh my god, look at my rangefinder that's like from 1970 but has a digital. No, it's a really good digital camera that's worth its price. It's a very high price, but it's the only thing you're gonna get. It's the only camera that gets you what it gets you for that price.
And on top of everything, the size of it, number one, it feels really nice in the hand. I'm not going to say it's the most compact camera, but it feels really nice in the hand, and it's compact enough to fit in a smaller camera bag, and it's great size for travel where it's like around your neck, but it's not too like, it's not like this massive thing, you know what I mean? Like having a DSLR or anything.
So something to add and compare and just kind of back up Yanni, what he's saying. Think about this. The Sony RX1R2, which is a 35 mil full frame. It's a smaller camera, body-wise, has a pop-up viewfinder, isn't weather sealed as far as I'm looking and seeing. And it is an older camera, I think. It has a 42 megapixel sensor. I think the one that's
still a better sensor than what's in this.
You think so?
Well, I looked at the comparisons. It has better low light performance and all that.
But still, point of the matter is like, that is still a $3,300 camera. So
and it's 35 millimeter and only f2.
Yeah. So we factor that in.
Only f2? What do you mean only f2? Oh, I understand. Yeah. Sorry. I was like, wait, you can't change the aperture? Like you can only shoot at f2?
It's like, what is that?
Yeah. It's late, guys. It's late. Sorry.
Yeah. So if you factor that into it, then you can kind of see that they besides those two cameras, what else is there anyway?
And it doesn't have a great viewfinder. It has like a viewfinder that pops up from the corner.
Yeah.
And a bunch of other little things. It's a great camera for $3,000, but this just does more.
Yeah.
Yeah. And it's like it's a luxury item. Like people are going to know.
Yeah.
That wedding that I was just talking about, the little one, this like the mini wedding, the dinner party one, the mom of the bride saw my cameras and she goes, "Oh, wow. Are those Leicas? I'm so impressed. That's awesome." And like, she knew. And I was like, really? For real? Like, and that happens to me all the time. Happens to me almost every wedding. Like someone will say something about it.
For you, it's good because it's like, oh, this guy, like he's legit. For me, I kind of hate it. Like I walk into like a bar with like the camera like on me or something. And it's like, is that a Leica? I'm like, fuck, yes.
Yeah.
I bought it used.
Yeah, I mean, it definitely makes you. I mean, I've heard this over and over that it makes you a target, like in certain, if you travel to certain areas, like, in Asia, for example, like Indonesia and Thailand and those places too. Like, if they see that red dot, you're like now their target for robbery. Oh my God, so many people do that. I personally don't see the need for it. It maybe would do that if I felt like I was traveling to somewhere sketch.
I do it for the conversation. I don't want to be like, oh my God, is that Leica? What do you do for a living? Or like, what's this? Or like, oh, is it really a good camera? Oh, is it worth the price? Like, I don't want to have those conversations.
Yanni's antisocial.
No, I like talk. Let's talk about photography. Don't ask me like, is it really worth the price? Like,
I don't know.
What's it worth to you?
Maybe I haven't had one as long because you've had one a lot longer than I have. But the few times I've had people talk to me about it, it's just like, oh, is that a Leica? Oh, cool. Like, all right, nice. Like, like saying nice car and then moving on. It actually happened to me in the Keys with the M10 when I just got it. I had it on the table at, these high tops that we're sitting at with me and my wife. And one of the bartenders or server, somebody came by and like, he was either, I forgot who he was, if he was serving us or not, but he's like, oh man, it's a nice camera. He's like, is that a Leica? I'm like, yeah, it's an M10. He goes, oh man, that's really nice. And like, he's like thumbs up, and never saw him again. So, like sometimes it's just that. And otherwise,
I've been on I think this happened to me in Paris. Actually, I was out street shooting and I was just like walking around and I had it in my hand, but I had it kind of like on my chest. And some guy who also had an M10, like kind of like passed me. He like looks at me. He's like, he didn't even say anything. He just like pointed at me like, yo, what's up? like a gang.
Two of us here.
Yeah. Like a gang.
I just like to avoid those conversations. Like, I don't mind. Let's talk about, it's a camera. Let's talk about cameras. Let's not talk about.
I like talking about Leica specifically because I feel like, number one, there's so much about it to talk about. And I think that there is a certain type of specific camaraderie around the brand. And I've made great friends, including you guys, because of Leica, I feel like I
pretty much don't like everybody else.
Well, you bring up a good point. There's camaraderie, but I think what Yanni's talking about is the people who don't necessarily have it and see it like it's a Ferrari. Like, like the typical curse when you see somebody with or not you, but some people see, like a nice car. It's like, oh, what do you do, man? Like, so I get that.
I get you.
That's a possibility. If you're talking to other people who are into photography or even like shooters themselves, and that's where the camaraderie comes in. And
like, it's the interaction of the non-car person that sees the Ferrari, the non-watch person that sees the Rolex, the non-camera person that sees the Leica. Like, those interactions, like,
I can agree.
I also get is that a Leica? Wow, my grandfather had a Leica, blah, blah. Like, I like that interaction. Like, you're not really a photography person, but
that is a great interaction.
You like
That's
that
happened to me too.
I love when that happens.
Yeah. I was at a client's house and the dad of the family that I was shooting, like, so I guess, what would be the grandfather was there, and he saw my Leica and he's like, oh, I have one. I have it in the back room. Do you want to see it? And I was like, oh yeah, dude, of course I want to see that Leica. And he had an R4. It was awesome.
Ooh, that's almost up there with the M5.
Yeah, it's one of those big guys.
Those slick boys.
All right, guys. Well, if you guys want to talk about Leica, please DM me and I will talk for hours about Leica. And if you want to listen to more of this podcast, give us a like and subscribe so that we can continue to do this for your listening and viewing pleasures. Probably not viewing, but listening.
Yeah.
So we have 11 episodes now. We'll get to the next milestone one day. All right, guys. See you next week.
Later, guys.